Okay. So what are the hormones coming from anterior pituitary gland? Imad?
Hormones of pituitary gland.
Yeah, anterior pituitary gland.
Anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary both release hormones. Anterior pituitary releases uh, thyrotropin releasing hormone, growth hormone,
Is it releasing hormone,
FSH,
beta?
LH. Yes,
Imad,
ma'am.
just a minute. Is it releasing hormone coming from anterior pituitary?
So sorry, TSH, not
Yeah,
TRH,
very good. That
TSH,
means we
TSH,
have all.
FSH, LH,
Mm,
growth hormone, prolactin,
yeah,
and ACTH, adrenocorticoid. Uh, that
adrenocorticotropic
should be
hormone.
useful.
Okay,
Huh.
fine. Okay. Page number 375. See here, it's a very good table here we have. So that means we have all stimulating hormone coming from anterior pituitary, isn't it? So from where do we get releasing hormones then? By mistake you said thyroid releasing hormone, isn't it? Adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone. That means there are releasing hormones as well. Isn't it? Ritika, from where do we get releasing hormones?
Hypothalamus.
Very good. Hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. Very good. Okay. Now, if you look into this picture, like you are finding, see in the brain, we have the pituitary gland, just above pituitary gland, we have hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the super control, in fact, which in fact releases all releasing hormones. When you talk about anterior pituitary, you should talk only about SH. That means these are all stimulating hormones basically. So he is asking you to give the list of hormones coming from anterior pituitary. So we have growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and prolactin. Okay. So among all these, he is asking us to describe one hormone in detail. The remaining hormones obviously are very small other than growth hormone. So we should go in detail about growth hormone. So to just complete the lecture, we also will talk about the other hormones like TSH. We know it goes and stimulates the thyroid gland for the release of T3, T4. ACTH, it goes and stimulates the suprarenal glands situated over the kidneys for the release of like hormones coming from GFR, zona glomerulosa fasciculata and reticularis. Follicle stimulating hormone, it goes and stimulates the follicles of, in the males it is stimulating the testes and in the females it is stimulating the ovaries for the release of respective hormones. Okay, luteinizing hormone, where does it come, meta? During menstrual cycle, I talked about LH surge. That means on the day of ovulation, for the release of ovum from the Graafian follicle, we need luteinizing hormone. Okay, prolactin helps in the
Milk
secretion.
ejection reflex.
Very good.
Milk secretion.
Yeah, very good. Secretion of milk ejection reflex. It also actually helps during parturition. Okay, for the contraction of the uterus and also for the baby to come out of the uterine cavity. Okay, during parturition. So all these are anterior hormones. We also have posterior hormones, antibiotic and oxytocin. Now let us go into the details of growth hormone. So growth hormone, we know it is the very important hormone coming from anterior pituitary. Okay, this is pars distalis. So now this growth hormone is secreted by somatotropes, which are acidophilic cells in anterior pituitary. It's protein in nature. It is having single polypeptide chain, like it has around 191 amino acids. Molecular weight is 21,500. So many details are not required. So it's a protein hormone. Like once it is released into the blood circulation, you will see it is binding with plasma proteins. Okay, so that is GH binding proteins. So half-life of this growth hormone is 20 minutes. So we know like growth hormone is very, very important for the growth mechanism. In like right from the birth till death, we have different types of growths occurring, isn't it? Suppose if it is about length of the body, like it is helps us to grow tall. Okay, but if it is released in excess, then it leads to gigantism. Even if it is released in less, we will discuss dwarfism. Now, what are the very important functions? Now, see, any hormone, the basic important subheadings what we need to have is all metabolisms: protein metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, fat metabolism. So now growth hormone is like it is basically it is helping in the growth of the body. That means it has anabolic effect. That means it is helping in building mechanism. It helps in the formation of bone. It helps in the formation of muscle. It helps in the formation of hair. That means all protein synthesis is being promoted by the action of growth hormone. It accelerates the synthesis of proteins, increases amino acid transport through the cell membrane. The concentration of amino acids in the cell increases. Thus, that I told you know it helps in the synthesis of proteins. Okay, basically, if you just recollect the knowledge of biochemistry, we have studied about replication, transcription, and translation. Replication, where DNA is forming the daughter DNA, then transcription is the formation of mRNA, and the translation is formation of proteins from mRNA, right? So, all these mechanisms are actually enhanced by the action of growth hormone. Okay, so increasing transcription, increasing the formation of proteins from RNA translation, decreases the breakdown of proteins. That means it is conserving proteins. Unnecessarily, proteins should not be utilized for the production of ATP energy. We know we can get ATP either from carbohydrate, protein, or fat, but ideal way to bring the ATP is always glucose, isn't it? So here this growth hormone is protecting proteins so that they are not utilized unnecessarily for the production of energy. They are used for body building mechanism. So promotes anabolism of proteins indirectly. Okay, so growth hormone increases the release of insulin. So once insulin is more, we know it's very good, like insulin promotes the transport of glucose to the tissues, so the tissues can nicely utilize glucose for the production of energy, isn't it? That is. Now coming to fat metabolism, all three metabolisms headings we will have better. Okay, protein, fat and carbohydrate. Now on fat metabolism, it is mobilizing fats from adipose tissues. That means what? Only this sentence is enough to elaborate the further paragraph. What is this? Once the proteins are fats are mobilized, what will happen? It will release energy from fatty acids. That means it helps in like ultimately when fats are utilized for the production of ATP, we know it is leading to ketosis, isn't it? Acetone, acetyl, CoA, and what are the three keto acids we have? Beta hydroxy, butyryl CoA, isn't it? So the ketone body production is increased. You call it as ketosis. Okay, that means if it is not controlled, suppose if it is more than normal, then it will lead to a condition that is called as fatty liver. Okay, then what are its effects on carbohydrate metabolism? Basically, here itself you should have understood like it helps in more and more transport of glucose to the tissues. Okay, it is increasing the release of insulin. So see what are the effects? Decreases the peripheral utilization of glucose for the production of energy. That means though insulin is increased, but at the same time the major source of energy we have is from fatty acids, fatty like from the mobilization of fats. So it is actually reducing the peripheral utilization of glucose for energy production. Okay. So because you will see the formation of acetyl CoA, it is already a lot of acetyl CoA is available due to the mobilization of fats. That's how this glucose is now being transported back to the liver. What will happen to the glucose if it is remaining in blood? If it is transported back, it will be converted to glycogen. That means it helps in the glycogenesis. Okay, that is. So, but suppose if it is not allowing the glucose to be utilized by the cells in the blood, then you will see large amount of glucose will remain in the blood. It will lead to, suppose normal amount of growth hormone will not cause all these effects like diabetes, but suppose if growth hormone is released in excess, then that growth hormone will cause increased blood glucose levels, which is the diabetogenic effect of growth hormone. If you remember from my previous classes, I always tell you the only hormone which is protective, which is preventing diabetes, is insulin. Rest all of the hormones in our body are having more or less diabetogenic effect. Okay, so the diabetogenic effect here is it is increasing the blood glucose levels because the glucose is remaining in blood for a longer time. So, what are the effects we find in the bones? See here, when you consider the knowledge of general anatomy, when you consider the long bone, what are the two ends of the bones? Growing bone, we have diaphysis, diaphysis. In the center, we have diaphysis is towards the center, then towards the ends, we have epiphyseal cartilage, isn't it? Metaphysis, diaphysis, and epiphysis. So, as long as the epiphyseal cartilage is there, the bone will grow in length, isn't it? Metaphysis towards center, diaphysis, diaphysis towards the end. Then epiphyseal cartilage you will find at the ends of the bone. So, as long as epiphyseal cartilage is there, the bone will grow in length. Once the epiphyseal cartilage is ossified, the bone will not grow in length anymore. Okay, so as long as epiphyseal cartilage is available, the bone will grow in length, that is facilitated by the action of growth hormone. So, what are the bone forming cells we have? Osteogenic are the osteoblast cells. What are the bone eating cells? Osteoclast, isn't it? So before puberty, if the growth hormone is increased, it will lead to gigantism. After puberty also, if you find growth hormones levels are more in blood, then bone cannot grow in length, but bone will start growing in width. So if bone starts growing in width, then you will see the thickening of bone will be more, like jawbone may become wide, okay, like bulky, like shoulder also will they become very much big. So that condition is acromegaly. Okay. So how is this mode of action of growth hormone? It is acting through some second messenger like somatomedin. It's also a protein which is synthesized from the liver. Okay. So somatomedin is a substance through which growth hormone is acting. It's a polypeptide. Molecular weight is 7,500. Okay. So we have two types of somatomedins: insulin-like growth factor, which is somatomedin C, and insulin-like growth factor 1 and 2. Okay. So that is, so overall this is, that means directly it doesn't act, it acts via somatomedin. Okay. And so regulation of growth hormone, it's better we go with the help of a flowchart like this. So when does the anterior pituitary release growth hormone? So whenever there is hypoglycemia, fasting, starvation, exercise, stress and trauma, this will actually stimulate hypothalamus for the release of this growth hormone, releasing hormone, which goes and stimulates the anterior pituitary. Growth hormone releasing polypeptide also. So when growth hormone is released, it is acting via liver and other tissues, like by the release of somatomedin. If already a lot of somatomedin is available in the blood, then you will see there will be feedback inhibition which will stop, like growth hormone inhibiting hormone will come and it will not allow the growth hormone to be released in the blood circulation. Okay. So after studying in detail about growth hormone, you can talk about conditions of excess, you call it as gigantism before fusion of epiphyseal cartilages. Okay, this is acromegaly, where you can see wrinkled forehead. Okay, the jawbones also have increased in size. Supraorbital ridges have become more prominent. Okay, thickened lips and protrusion of lower jaw. The hands also, this is the normal size of hand. You can see the acromegalic hand. Okay. So quite opposite to that, we have dwarfism. What is the difference between pituitary dwarf and cretinism? Imad,
Cretin is, I think, in Myxedema.
which hormone is deficient in cretinism?
Thyroid
Yeah.
hormone.
Okay. So what happens in cretinism? Both are dwarfs only. Whether you see cretin, whether you see dwarf.
But there is mental in Myxedema. There is mental retardation also.
Yeah, very good. In case of cretinism, we will find mental retardation, whereas, see, growth hormone is not much involved in the development of central nervous system. Myelination and all these are under the control of thyroid hormones, because of which deficiency of thyroid hormone is not only causing growth retardation but also mental retardation. That's what you see in cretin. Okay, that is cretinism. So that is all about this answer, Vita. Then we will go to decerebrate rigidity. What is decerebrate rigidity? give me some idea like what is decerebrate rigidity. We have done CNS also, no, Ritika, Hema? We taught you completely. Experimental animals we use. Do you remember, Imad, something? Decerebrate rigidity.
Decerebrate
Preparation
rigidity.
of animals, 906. Yes, Peter.
Uh, Ma'am, is it related to uh, upper motor neuron lesions?
Not directly, but tracts are cut better.
Okay, tracks. Okay, okay.
Okay, you generally do experiments in animals. I'll show you, I'll take you to the answer 906. In books by other authors have shown cat with different caricature. Okay. See, generally preparation of animals for experimental studies. Under this, we have this condition like decerebrate preparation, and the condition is decerebrate rigidity. What exactly it is your we have seen the structure of brain, brainstem, like cerebrum, brainstem, and spinal cord. Suppose if you cut the brainstem, what happens? The ascending tracts are cut and descending tracts are also cut. So suppose this cutting of the brainstem we are doing when the like cat is in a typical extended positions. The two forelimbs and two hind limbs are in a rigid extended position, and when the cat is in this position, you are just cutting the tracts of the which are passing through the brainstem. Once you cut this, what happens? So initially, when the cat was in the extended position, that means what the motor tracts were intact. The information has come from the motor area of the cerebral cortex. It has passed via the brainstem, via spinal cord. The motor nerves have triggered, because of which the motor nerves cause the muscles to contract, because of which the muscles were in well contracted position in case of a cat. You should just imagine the whole limb, the trunk will be in extended position, the two forelimbs and hind limbs will be in extended position. The typical caricature of cat will be hyper extended position of the body. But suddenly if you disturb this cat, the cat will fall down and it will not get this position back again because the tracks have been cut. Okay, neither the ascending tracts can carry the information to the sensory cortex of the cerebrum, nor the information can come from the motor area of the cerebral cortex. So muscles cannot contract anymore. But such, we should not say, but cruel type of experiments which previously animal experiments used to be done, such animals like monkeys, dogs and cats were used to check the functioning of tracks, like how these tracks are actually working. So such animal experiment which is no more, it is actually not existing now, so you call this decerebrate preparation, and this thing is a decerebrate rigidity. The typical caricature of cat is actually called as ophistotonus. The posture is extension of all four limbs, extension of tail, arching of the back, hyperextension of spine. This is actually called as ophistotonus. Once you disturb the animal, the posture cannot be maintained back. And of course, we do not do such experiments cannot be done in human beings. Decerebration usually it occurs due to lesion in diencephalon or midbrain. Okay, you understood better? So that is what is called as decerebrate preparation or decerebrate rigidity. Okay, better? So that is actually a small answer only, but it has been asked in essay. Okay. So what is saltatory conduction? Ritika, what is saltatory conduction? Beta Iman.
Ma'am, nerve conduction. I think it's not discontinuous conduction. I think.
Okay, like you are close to the answer, but not 100% correct. Ritika, Hema, you are not speaking at all, beta.
From one node of Ranvier to the
Very
next
good.
node in
Very
the
good.
neuron.
Very good. Jumping of impulses from one node of
Okay.
the Ranvier to another node of Ranvier is saltatory conduction. You have this under this only. Properties. Yes, beta, this one. See, saltatory conduction. As Imad is telling us, see, basically we have fast type of conductions will occur in myelinated neurons. You can see we have myelin sheath and these are nodes of Ranvier. You can see the impulse is just jumping from this area from one node to another node. From one node, axon hillock it has started with, then from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier and it goes on. So this type of fast conduction is nothing but simple small answer only beta. Saltatory conduction. Okay. Visual pathway. Actually visual pathway is an essay question. I'll take it as an essay only. Meanwhile open the page in your respective books beta. See here. You look at the screen. When you are looking at the screen now, you can see here we have, this is our eyeball. Okay. So we have this side is nasal vision, like red and red color, whatever has been shown is the nasal field. And that means half of the eye comes under nasal field and the other half of the eye, this is the temporal bone, right? So we have nasal half of the visual field and temporal half of the visual field. When you just consider this as our eyeball, supposingly this as retina, we know from the retina we have optic nerve, right? So in this optic nerve, so if you just, two different colors have been used to make the optic fiber in the same color. Okay, one side the optic nerve nasal fibers have been shown in red color, the other side the nasal fibers have been shown in blue color. So when you see the optic chiasma, what we have seen in the base of the brain, so in the optic chiasma, the nasal fibers of right side will move to the left optic tract. Nasal fibers of left side will move to right optic tract. Whereas temporal fibers are not decussating. Only nasal fibers will cross over. Temporal fiber of right side will go to right optic tract only. Temporal fibers of left side will go to left optic tract only. So finally, each optic tract will contain temporal fibers of same side and nasal fibers of opposite side. So once the optic tract is moving in that direction, you will see it will be relaying in lateral geniculate body. Lateral geniculate body we have seen when we were doing thalamus, isn't it? The connections, lateral geniculate body. From there you will see the fibers are going and they are going to the visual cortex. Do you remember area number 17, 18 and 19? Occipital lobe. Okay. So these are all optic fibers, optic radiation which is going to visual cortex. Okay. So the lateral geniculate body has connections with superior colliculus of midbrain. Okay, if you remember medial geniculate body, it has connections with inferior colliculus. So first of all, you should draw this visual pathway and describe it in your words. Okay. Oh, forgot it. So you should describe this in your word like visual receptors in retina, then your first order of neurons that is in bipolar cells. That is, these are the layers of retina what we have. Second order neurons, ganglion, optic nerve, optic chiasma, optic tract, then lateral geniculate body, optic radiation, and finally visual cortex, area number 17, 18, and 19. So that means that is the pathway, that is the normal vision. We know like from the knowledge of anatomy, I told you, primary visual area is area number 17. When you are looking at me, my image is formed in the area number 17. Of course, in reverse, upside down direction. Okay. Then area number 18 and 19, those are visual association areas. That means what? When you see something after a long time again, you will recognize, yes, I have seen this some like 3 years back, 4 years back, I saw this movie, yes, I can recollect the story or something like that. That means the area number 18 and 19, those are associated with visual memory. Okay, whereas area number 17 is primary visual area. Okay, beta. So once you know this, then you should know the lesions. Very, very important. For lesions, you have to practice this diagram. Both the diagrams are very important. Though it is given as a short note here, 90% of the times this question comes as an essay. So now see here, we can see the lesions. Like lesion at the left optic nerve A. So total blindness of left eye. Here we have left eye and here we have right eye. Okay, then so suppose if the lesion is, this is the complete cut, that is B, that is right optic nerve. Obviously the right eye is losing complete vision, complete total blindness of the right eye. Then lesion of the lateral fibers of the left side, this is C, you can see here. So lateral side, what do we have? Temporal fibers of the same side, isn't it? So that is left nasal hemianopia. So that means nasal part of the vision is gone. So similarly, you have many other, just go through, like suppose if this is like D lesion, then right nasal hemianopia. Both the nasal sides are gone, you call it as binasal, uh, what is this, C plus D, you call it as like binasal hemianopia. Suppose if two temporal sides are gone, you call it as bitemporal hemianopia. Okay, homonymous hemianopia is a condition where you see one side left nasal and right temporal, or vice versa. Okay, like that. So that is, these are the visual defects pattern. Okay, just a minute. So I hope you understood this visual pathway, and we have also studied the lesions. Then, okay, seminal fluid. Um, Before I go to seminal fluid, because I'll take you to organ of Corti because we are in the same chapter. So what are the, do you remember the structure of organ of Corti? Where do you see organ of Corti? In the internal ear, inner ear, resting on the basement membrane. Special cells which are concerned. See, for organ of Corti, you have to thoroughly practice this diagram. Okay, so this is the basement membrane, what we have. Then we have different types of cells. Okay, among which the hair cells are very important. Actually, the hair cells are the cells which are chiefly concerned with the mechanism of hearing. So you see, these are outer hair cells we have, then we have inner hair cells. Okay, now just let me take you to this picture so that you understand the mechanism. See, we have 2.5 turns of cochlea, isn't it? Inside the turns of cochlea, we have like scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. That means scala media is an area where we have the organ of Corti. Above also we have perilymph, below also we have perilymph. Inside we have endolymph. Okay, so when the tympanic membrane is vibrating, you will see that oval window, the vibration will spread via this perilymph. Perilymph will vibrate and the water inside the scala media, that is the endolymph, will vibrate. Here you will have a membrane called as tectorial membrane. So this is the tectorial membrane. So whenever we are at rest, that means when we are not listening something, the hair cells are not in contact with tectorial membrane. But suppose if this endolymph is moving, then it will cause this tectorial membrane to come and touch the hair cells. The endolymph which is present in the scala media, this is all scala media only, inside which you will have this basement membrane or the spiral ligament over which the hair cells are resting. So at rest they are not in contact with tectorial membrane, but when that endolymph moves, these hair cells will come in contact with tectorial membrane, then action, but these are all functional neurons only, specialized neurons. Like you have in the retina also we have rods and cones, those are specialized neurons. Here in the like organ of Corti, these hair cells are also specialized neurons. Rest all cells are supporting cells only. Okay, so action potential develops in these hair cells which will be carried in the form of sound. Okay, so now when you talk about hair cells, first you should give the list of all these 10 different cells. border cells, inner hair cells, inner phalangeal cells, inner pillar cells, outer phalangeal cells, outer hair cells, cells of Hensen, cells of Claudius, tectorial membrane, and lamina reticularis. So about each, you just give one line or two lines, not much is required. But about outer hair cells and inner hair cells, you please give like in detail, because these are the chief cells which are concerned with the mechanism of hearing. Okay, outer hair cells and inner hair cells. Rest all you just practice this diagram, look at the cells, how do they look, just two lines or one line is enough. Okay, so that is about organ of Corti. Seminal fluid, estrogen, they are in the same chapter. Okay. Reproductive system, what is the page number? Yeah. Yeah. Seminal fluid, right? That was the question. So you have to give this composition better. Okay. Seminal fluid, like semen, like it has 10% sperms and seminal plasma 90%. We have products from seminal vesicles which gives 60% and products from prostate gland 30%. Okay. So that is, just give the complete composition in detail. That is seminal fluid. Okay, so that is semen or the seminal fluid. So semen, this is the composition. So how much, like during each ejaculation, usually we see 2 ml to 6 ml. Okay, specific gravity is 1.028. Reaction, all this you can write better. You can give the structure of sperm also, which has head, neck, body and tail. Actually, it's not asked, but still, doing like if you want to increase, you can better add this better. Applied physiology. Azoospermia, it's a condition where you will see there are no sperms in semen. It's a congenital disease. This is leading to infertility because of male counterpart. Okay, oligo is always scanty, less in number. Okay, so that is low sperm count with less than 20 million of sperms per ml of semen. This is also causing infertility. Tetrazoospermia, presence of sperms of abnormal morphology. This is the normal morphology, right? Suppose if the shape is changing, double-headed or something different, then you call it as like tetrazoospermia. We generally see this condition in Crohn's disease. This you will learn in second year. This is all related. Hodgkin's disease is the tumor of lymph nodes. Celiac disease, Crohn's disease, you generally see in the GIT disorders. Okay, aspermia, lack of semen. Okay, retrograde ejaculation is like semen is, instead of going out through the urethral orifice, it's just going back into the urinary bladder. Okay, oligospermia characterized by low volume. Hemato means when sometimes blood also is coming in the semen, that is hematospermia. Okay, so that is all. Then one is estrogen. No? The other question, from where, what is the source of estrogen? Imad, Hema, Ritika. Estrogen, what?
Ovaries, ma'am.
Yeah, to be more specific, inside the ovary we have
From
Graafian
the
follicle.
uh, from the theca interna.
Very good. Theca interna is the source of estrogen. Okay. See, basically, theca interna is the chief source of estrogen, but it doesn't mean like, what is the source of progesterone?
The corpus luteum.
Corpus luteum. So, but corpus luteum also releases small amount of progesterone, estrogen also. And theca interna also releases small amount of progesterone as well. But the chief source of estrogen is theca interna cells, which we see in the Graafian follicle. Okay. Now, what are the functions of estrogen? You can write so many. Whatever you see during second, like puberty in case of a female, all those things we generally write for the functions of estrogen, isn't it? See source, it is like theca interna cells of ovarian follicles. Not only that, in placenta, from placenta during pregnancy, you will see the release of estrogen. Function C, it affects on ovarian follicles. That means the primordial follicles becomes into the primary, then primary to secondary follicle, secondary to Graafian, Graafian to, you will see, corpus luteum. All those stages are under the control of these ovarian hormones. Okay, one hormone which is helping in all these physiological changes taking place inside the ovary is estrogen. Then effect on uterus. See, uterus enlargement of all that menstrual cycle, if you remember the first half of menstrual cycle, it is under the control of estrogen. After ovulation, the second half of menstrual cycle where endometrial glands are growing, that is under the influence of progesterone. Okay, but same changes are given here. Okay, fallopian tubes. What is the lining epithelium of fallopian tube? Ciliated columnar epithelium. So they become more ciliated and more columnar with more number of beating of cilia during ovulation, and also when the during, of course, sexual intercourse, which will facilitate the movement of sperm towards the ovum, so that it is facilitating the fertilization in the ampulla part of the fallopian tube. Okay, that will be written under here. Effects on vagina. The vaginal epithelium, basically changes of vaginal epithelium from cuboidal into stratified type. See, before puberty, the epithelium is cuboidal. That's the reason vagina will be very much tender and it is more prone for infections. But after puberty, it is like becoming more strong. Okay, it is stratified squamous, non-keratinized type of epithelium, which prevents the vagina from infections and also from trauma. pH is also becoming acidic, because of which it will not allow the infections to occur frequently. Okay, so for the development of secondary sexual characters, what we see during after puberty: hair distribution, axillary hair, pubic hair. Okay, skin becomes soft and smooth, body shape, pelvic is widening, enlargement of mammary gland. Okay, bones also generally grow faster after puberty, and protein metabolism, anabolism, the type of